The sound of clinking glasses filled the air at the glittering wedding reception, and at that exact moment, Clara Westwood realized she had just been pushed out of her own family. "We just want to make things easier for the future," Amelia said softly, her tone gentle but firm. Beside her, Liam Crow, the newlywed husband, smiled confidently, his gray eyes sharp with calculation. He slid a cream-colored envelope across the table toward Clara, his voice smooth. "Just a small arrangement, Mother, a financial plan for the family." Clara looked down at the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly. "Are you talking about my assets?" Liam gave a polished smile. "Not exactly. Just a more efficient structure. You could delegate management of your investments to us. It's all for the family's benefit." The word family in his mouth sounded like a warning. Amelia forced a smile. "Liam just wants to help Mom. He's good with money, and I trust him." Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were distant. Suddenly, the bright, warm room felt cold. Clara nodded slowly. "All right, I'll read it later." Liam's grin widened. "We're flying to Santorini tomorrow. If you sign soon, it'll save everyone trouble later." His tone made it sound like a command, not a request. When they left, Clara sat quietly by the window. The late afternoon light fell in golden stripes across the dark wooden table. She opened the envelope. Inside was a contract transferring most of her assets into the Crow Family Trust, with Liam Crow listed as the sole trustee. A dry, bitter laugh escaped her lips. He thought she was just a lonely widow with some savings. He had no idea about the $8 million her late husband Robert had left hidden safely under Aurora Designs, a company only Robert's old lawyer Henry Lowell knew about. Clara sat still, her eyes drifting to the window. The Silver Pines estate, once her pride and joy, now felt like a monument to betrayal. Her daughter, who once promised, "I'll never leave you," Mom had signed her name on that promise's grave. That night, as rain began to fall softly, Clara poured herself a glass of red wine and stared at the reflection of her calloused hands in its dark surface. The distant rumble of thunder brought back Robert's voice. "If the world turns its back, stand tall. You're stronger than they think." The next morning, the doorbell rang. The mailman handed her an envelope stamped with an unfamiliar law firm's logo. Clara opened it to find a document titled Emergency Addendum, an urgent addendum to the Crow Trust, signed hastily by Amelia. Her stomach turned cold. A few hours later, a well-dressed young man arrived, his smile practiced to perfection. "Mrs. Westwood, I'm the legal representative for Mr. and Mrs. Crow. This is just a standard procedure to consolidate the family's finances." Clara gestured toward the chair. "You say Mr. and Mrs. Crow," she said evenly, "but my daughter is still a Westwood." The man hesitated, then forced a polite smile. "Of course. My apologies." He began explaining the details smoothly, like reading from a script. Clara listened until he finished, then said calmly, "You can tell Liam Crow that I will not sign anything until I have my own advisor." Her tone was quiet but sharp as steel. The young man faltered, his confidence slipping. "I'll deliver your message," he said before leaving. When the door closed, Clara stood by the window watching the rain fall. The droplets blended with the heat of her breath, hitting the wooden floor like faint, melancholy notes. She wasn't sure if it was rain or tears. She turned, picked up the phone, and dialed a familiar number. A deep male voice answered Henry Lowell speaking. "Henry," she said softly, "I need you." "What happened, Clara?" She looked at the envelope on the table, her eyes firm and cold. "They think I'm weak. I need you to help me prove them wrong." There was a long pause before Henry replied in his steady voice, "Another battle." Then Clara's smile was faint but fierce. "No, just a lesson, and this time They'll have to learn it themselves. Outside, thunder cracked across the sky. Inside, the golden light glowed across the face of a woman once dismissed as fragile. The pain in her eyes had hardened into purpose. She stepped to the window, gazing at the rain-soaked forest beyond. Silver Pines, once a refuge built from love and memory, was no longer a sanctuary. It would become her battleground. Clara lifted her glass and took a slow sip, the bitter taste burning her throat. For the first time in years, she felt no fear, only clarity. No one would ever take from her again what she had spent a lifetime building. From this moment on, she thought the rules would be hers to write. The morning after the rain, the pine forest surrounding the Silver Pines estate was blanketed in white mist. But inside Clara Westwood, a different kind of storm was rising. She sat in the library where the faint morning light illuminated the portrait of her late husband, Robert. "You once told me," she whispered softly, "never let anyone decide my worth. I'll remember." On the desk sat a cold cup of coffee and the folder Liam had left behind. Transfer of ownership, supervising trustee Liam Crow. Each word felt sharp as a blade. Clara could almost see his smug smile, believing that with a few papers, he could claim the work of her entire life. She picked up the phone and called Henry Lowell Roberts' longtime lawyer and closest friend. "I need to see you, and can we meet at noon?" His deep, steady voice replied, "I'm always ready." 3 hours later, they met at a small cafe on the hillside, the same place where she and Robert had met in their youth. Henry's eyes were heavy with concern. "Amelia signed something, didn't she?" "She did more than sign," Clara said quietly. "She trusts him. Liam thinks I'm weak, easy to persuade. But he's forgotten that I've survived worse pain than this." Henry opened his briefcase and laid out a few documents. "I did some digging. Liam Crow, 33 years old, twice fired for financial manipulation. He now owes over $100,000 to an investment fund in New York." Clara looked over the papers, her expression darkening. "He married my daughter to save himself." Henry nodded. "And he won't stop until he gets the money." Clara leaned back, her tone calm but resolute. "I'll make him believe I've lost everything. Then he'll walk right into his own trap." Henry raised an eyebrow. "That's dangerous, Clara. Not as dangerous as letting him think he's already won." Later that afternoon, Clara returned to Silver Pines. The house was silent except for the ticking clock in the living room. She opened the safe and pulled out Robert's old files, hidden investment records he had protected for years. "You always said I knew how to protect things," she whispered. "Now I'll prove it." That evening, Henry brought her a fabricated financial report, total assets reduced to $260,000 after debt repayments. Everything was listed under her maiden name, Clara Mendez. "It's realistic enough for Liam to believe," Henry said. Clara studied every line carefully, then nodded. "Perfect. I'll let him find it himself." When Henry left, she stood by the fireplace, the flames flickering across her determined face. "I've lost many things in my life," she murmured, "but never my mind." That night, Clara opened the window, letting the mountain wind rush in. She placed the fake documents on her desk, right where they would be easily seen. The lamplight gleamed on the white paper, a perfect bait for a greedy man. The next morning, she stepped out into the garden, leaving the front door slightly ajar. Sunlight spilled gold across the wet stone path, and the scent of pine filled the air. Everything felt peaceful, but Clara knew peace was only the pause before the storm. 3 days later, the phone rang. Mrs. Westwood said the banker's urgent voice, "We've detected an unusual login attempt on the Aurora savings account under the name Clara Mendez." Clara smiled faintly. "Thank you. Leave everything as it is." Hanging up, she looked out through the window. The trap had sprung. That afternoon, Amelia's email arrived. Mom, Liam and I are in Santorini. He just wants to make sure our future is secure. Clara read it over and over, her heart tightening. Her daughter still believed in the man who was using her. She typed a few words, then deleted them. The future cannot be built on greed. It wasn't time to say it yet. That evening, the wind rose. Clara poured herself a glass of wine and stood by the tall window, gazing at the blackened sky. In the reflection, her face no longer looked soft. Her eyes were cold, unwavering. She thought of the early years with Robert, when they were mocked for risking everything on Aurora Designs. But they had survived not through luck, but through intellect and strength. Now she would survive the same way. Liam thinks I'm just a widow, she whispered. But he's forgotten who helped Robert build this empire. The clock struck midnight. Clara turned off every light except a single candle flickering on her desk. The flame cast shadows on the fake documents and lit her eyes, burning bright in the dark. She lifted her glass, her voice low but steady. If he wants to play, I'll show him what real strategy means. Outside, the wind howled through the pine forest, its whispering branches like a silent vow. Clara's gaze lingered on the candle's flicker, her lips barely moving. Liam Crow, she whispered, your game officially begins. The morning after the rain, sunlight streamed through the window and fell upon the wooden desk, where the fake document still lay quietly waiting like a trap. Clara Westwood sipped her cold tea, the bitterness sharpening her focus. Everything was in place. Now she only needed one mistake from Liam, and she knew he would make it because greed always blinds its victims. The doorbell rang. A man in a dark suit stood at the gate holding a leather briefcase, his smile perfectly rehearsed. Mrs. Westwood, I'm Andrew Palmer, the Crow's attorney. I've been authorized to deliver an addendum to the financial agreement. Clara looked at him, her voice calm. I told you I won't sign anything without my own lawyer present. Andrew kept smiling. It's just a minor addendum, ma'am, a precaution to avoid legal issues later. Nothing is minor when someone hides it behind a smile, Clara replied coldly. You're underestimating me. The smile froze on his face before he bowed slightly. I'll inform Mr. Crow. Have a good day, Mrs. Westwood. Clara watched the car disappear down the driveway. His visit wasn't random. It was a test. Liam was probing, trying to see if she was hiding something. She walked back to her desk and brushed her fingers across the forged documents Henry had prepared. He won't stop, she murmured, then picked up the phone and called Henry. I'm guessing you just had a visitor, Henry said. Yes, Clara replied. A man named Andrew Palmer. Tried to pressure me into signing. Liam's testing your reaction, Henry said thoughtfully. But he's not a patient man. Sooner or later, he'll try to access the account directly. Clara's tone was calm, almost amused. Good. All he'll find is bait. As the afternoon settled, Silver Pines was silent. Through the window, Clara watched the sunlight ripple through the pine branches. Her daughter used to play there carefree and trusting. The memory now stung like a blade. Liam had turned Amelia into someone dependent, vulnerable. She unlocked her phone and looked at Amelia's wedding photo, her daughter's bright, innocent smile beside Liam's arrogant gaze. My dear girl, Clara whispered, I'm not angry, but I won't let you be destroyed. At 8 that evening, the house phone rang. Mrs. Westwood, a woman's voice, asked from Aurora Bank. Someone is attempting to verify your identity to gain access to an account under the name Clara Mendez. We found the activity suspicious and wanted to confirm. Clara's tone remained steady. It's not me. Please record it as unauthorized and temporarily lock the account. When she hung up, she glanced toward the dark window. The wind rushed through the pines. Liam had begun his move. That night, she wrote a short note to Henry. He's touched the account. Initiate phase 2. Prepare to strike back. The next morning, an email from the bank appeared. Alert attempted transfer, failed transaction blocked. Clara read it, a faint smile curling on her lips. Everything was unfolding exactly as she expected. By noon, she went to the village market and bought a few sprigs of lavender. When she returned to the gate, there was a letter on the stone step. The envelope was thick, the handwriting familiar. Clara opened it. "Mom, please don't make things worse. Liam's worried because you're not responding. We'll be home soon. I love you. Amelia." Clara gripped the letter tightly, her voice cracking. "Poor child, you have no idea you're living beside a predator." That night, moonlight blanketed the garden in silver. Clara sat by the window, listening to the wind rattling the panes. She called Henry again. "He's using my old name to access the funds. He won't stop." "Then we speed things up," Henry replied. "I'll have my team trace the login address. If it's him, we'll have proof." Clara smiled faintly. "No need to push. He'll expose himself. All we have to do is wait." After hanging up, she walked slowly around the room. The shelves, the photographs, the grain of the wooden floor, each piece carried memories of the life she had built with Robert. Everything they had worked for was being challenged, yet instead of fear, Clara felt something different stirring inside her, a quiet power, cold and steady. She lit a small candle and placed it in front of Robert's picture. "Robert," she whispered, "you once said I was the smarter one. Maybe it's time I proved it." The candlelight flickered across her face, not the face of a grieving mother, but that of a strategist waiting for the perfect moment. Outside, the pine trees whispered in the wind. Clara stared at the dancing flame and smiled. "Thank you, Liam," she said softly. "You've just awakened the woman I thought was long gone." On the desk, the forged documents still lay silent and dangerous, waiting patiently to fulfill their purpose. The morning after the rain, the pine forest around the Silver Pines estate was still drenched in mist. Clara Westwood stood by the window, a cup of hot coffee warming her hands. She knew Liam Crow believed he had the upper hand, but for Clara today was only the beginning of a game, and she was the one directing it. She opened her laptop and reviewed the falsified financial report Henry had prepared. Every number was crafted with precision real enough to deceive even a trained financial analyst. In Liam's eyes, she was nothing more than a naive widow, once wealthy, now reduced to a few $100,000, just enough to tempt him, but not enough to make him suspicious. When the clock struck 8, Henry called. "News," he said. The unauthorized login came from the Sapphire Hotel in Santorini. Clara smiled faintly. The same hotel where they're spending their honeymoon. Exactly. He's being careless. I've already saved the full access logs. Good, she said calmly. Let him think he's winning. The more confident he gets, the more reckless he'll become. The morning passed quietly. Clara tended to her garden-cut fresh flowers and stopped by the village church to make a donation. To anyone watching, she was a serene woman, living a peaceful life. No one could have guessed the meticulous plan unfolding in her mind. When she returned home that afternoon, a thick envelope lay on the stone steps stamped with the Crow Financial Group logo. The label read, "Additional documentation." Clara didn't open it. Instead, she called Henry. He sent more paperwork. "I assume it's a trap." "Don't touch it," Henry warned. "I'll send someone to collect it." An hour later, one of his associates arrived to retrieve the envelope. When they left, Clara stood by the window watching them go. A wave of bitterness rose in her chest. Her daughter was living beside a man determined to destroy her, and Amelia still believed it was love. That evening, Clara sat by the fireplace and wrote a letter. "Amelia, love should never take away your freedom. If someone makes you afraid, remember it's not love." She folded the letter, but didn't send it. Not yet. Around 10 that night, Henry called again. I checked the envelope, he said. It's a forged contract with your electronic signature attached. Liam's trying to create proof that you agreed to transfer your money. Clara smiled thinly. Good. He's leaving his own trail. Are you sure you want to continue? Henry asked carefully. If he finds out Henry, she interrupted a person who's already lost everything, has nothing left to fear. But he does. When the call ended, Clara glanced around the quiet house. Every photograph, every piece of decor, every trace of Robert's presence reminded her why she was fighting. Not for money, but for truth. That night, she opened the safe and took out the USB drive Henry had sent a complete record of Liam's login attempts. She made a backup copy and locked it in a separate drawer. The glow of the screen reflected off her face as she worked. She knew that with one more step, everything would turn in her favor. She didn't need the police nor a public scandal. She wanted Liam to dig his own grave, one click at a time. The next morning, Clara called Amelia. Sweetheart, when are you two coming home? I'd like to have lunch together. Her daughter's voice was warm but cautious. Maybe this weekend, Mom. Liam just has a few things to finish. That's fine, Clara replied gently. I'll prepare the paperwork so there won't be any confusion later. Amelia's tone brightened. I knew you'd understand, Mom. When the call ended, Clara set the phone down, her eyes glinting with resolve. Her daughter had no idea that the paperwork her mother mentioned was actually the final trap. At noon, Clara sent Henry an email they'll be back this weekend. Set up the meeting. Everything must appear completely legal. Henry replied simply, understood. This will be the end. That afternoon, Clara stepped onto the balcony. The wind brushed through her silver hair, carrying the scent of pine. She looked up at the sky and murmured, Robert, you used to say I trusted people too easily. Maybe now I've finally learned my lesson. As the sun began to set, she lit the small lamp on her desk. The forged documents, the USB drive, and the unsent letter lay side by side, 3 silent weapons powerful enough to bury a betrayer. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, steady and rhythmic like a heartbeat. Clara smiled faintly. Liam Crow, she whispered, you think you're playing with a fragile widow, but in truth, you're just a pawn in my game. The lamplight flickered over her composed face, the face of a woman once betrayed now, ready to strike back with intellect and unshakable will. Saturday morning mist still covered the Pine Hills when Clara Westwood awoke. She brewed her coffee and stood by the window, gazing down the stone path that led to the Silver Pines estate. Today, Amelia and Liam would return. Everything was ready, every word, every glance, and the calm composure she would maintain until the very end. Henry Lowell arrived early, carrying his leather briefcase. Are you sure you want to meet him in person? He asked quietly. I can handle this through legal channels. Clara shook her head. No, I want to look him in the eyes when the truth shatters. And Amelia needs to see the man she calls her husband for who he truly is. Henry nodded gravely. Very well, I'll stay nearby and observe. Near noon, the sound of a car echoed through the driveway. Amelia stepped out first, her smile bright, but her eyes clouded with unease. Liam followed behind, walking with the confidence of a man who believed he was still in control. Hello, Mother, Amelia said, embracing her gently. Clara returned the hug, holding her daughter close before meeting Liam's gaze. Come in, she said calmly. I've prepared what you wanted to see. In the living room, sunlight streamed across the polished wooden table where a thick folder awaited. Clara poured tea and said softly, Sit down. Let's talk like family. Liam took his seat, glancing over the papers. I just want everything to be clear to avoid misunderstandings. Good, Clara replied, pushing the folder toward him. Here's everything that's left of my assets. After debts, only $260,000 remain. If you want to help, feel free to take a look." Liam opened the folder, his eyes lighting up briefly before dimming. The numbers were flawless, seamless, with no inconsistencies. He tried to stay composed. Amelia watched him puzzled. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just surprised," he said, forcing a faint smile. Clara tilted her head. "Were you expecting more?" He swallowed hard. "I thought you still had shares in Aurora Designs." "That company was sold long ago," Clara replied gently. "Robert didn't leave much. I only have enough to live comfortably." Disappointment flickered in his eyes, and the room grew heavy with silence. After lunch, Clara set her teacup down and looked at the couple. "There's something I need to say." Liam looked up. "What is it?" Mother Clara rose slowly, her voice calm and steady. "I know you tried to access the account under the name Clara Mendez. I know you sent a lawyer to pressure me into signing, and I know you forged bank documents." The air froze. Amelia stared at her husband in shock. What is she talking about?" Liam's face went pale, his voice trembling. "You're mistaken, Mother. I was only—" "Don't lie," Clara interrupted. "The IP address from the Sapphire Hotel was logged. I have all the evidence." Liam jumped up, his voice sharp and angry. "You trapped me." "No," Clara replied evenly. "You trapped yourself." Amelia's voice shook. "Liam, is it true?" He took her hand. "Darling, your mother is wrong. I was only trying to help her." Help, Clara's tone was icy. "By forging my signature." He fell silent. The room thickened with tension. Clara spoke again, her voice low but cutting. "You didn't just betray me, Liam. You betrayed the one person who believed in you the most." From the hallway, Henry stepped forward, his voice calm and firm. "We have the evidence, videos, access logs." He placed a USB drive on the table. Amelia stumbled back, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh my God, you really did it." Liam bowed his head, struggling for words. "I just wanted to protect you." Clara's eyes were cold as steel. "A man who protects you doesn't make your mother live in fear." Liam looked around, his voice cracking. "I don't need to be humiliated." "Then leave," Henry said firmly, "before we hand this over to the police." Without a word, Liam turned and stormed out. The door shut behind him with a heavy echo. Silence filled the room. Clara placed a comforting hand on her daughter's shoulder. "I'm sorry you had to see that." Amelia burst into tears. "No, Mother, I needed to. I've been blind for too long." Clara pulled her into her arms, her tone softening. "It's all right, my dear. You just believed in love. But real love should never make you weak." The two women stood together quietly, the only sound the whisper of the wind through the pines outside. Henry left the house without a word, giving them the peace they needed. Clara stroked Amelia's hair gently. "Everything will be fine, sweetheart. You've lost someone, but you've found yourself again." Amelia nodded, tears still falling. Outside, the afternoon sunlight spilled golden across the pine branches. Clara gazed at the warm light, and for the first time in months she felt her heart grow lighter. The game was over, and this time truth was the one that won. The next morning, sunlight poured over the Silver Pines estate, but the air still felt heavy after the emotional storm. Clara Westwood stood by the window, watching the mist dissolve among the pine trees. Liam was gone, yet unease lingered in her chest. Men like him never disappeared quietly. Amelia came down the stairs, her face, pale eyes swollen from a sleepless night of tears. "Mom," she whispered. Clara turned her voice gentle. "Sit down, my dear." They sat at the dining table in silence until Amelia finally spoke. "He left during the night. Didn't say a word." Good Clara replied calmly. "Silence is sometimes the clearest answer." Amelia lowered her head, voice trembling. "Mom, I was so foolish. I didn't believe you. I even blamed you for trying to divide us." Clara reached across the table, taking her daughter's hand. "No one is foolish for loving. But you must remember, some people use love as a way to take." The room fell quiet for a long moment. "I don't know how to start over," Amelia murmured. "By forgiving yourself," Clara said softly. "That's how you begin, and you'll come out stronger." She poured tea, the fragrance of jasmine drifting through the air, but the calm didn't last. Amelia's phone buzzed. Her hands trembled as she handed it to her mother. A short message read, "I didn't leave. I just need time. When your mother calms down, I'll come back." Clara's lips curved faintly. "He's not finished yet." "What do you think he'll do?" Amelia asked, worry clouding her voice. "Liam has lost his reputation and his leverage," Clara said quietly. "Men like that often come back for revenge." Just then the phone rang. It was Henry Lowell, his tone steady as ever. "Clara." "I traced a withdrawal. Liam took money out in New York. Looks like he's trying to move assets. Let him think he's safe," Clara replied. "I want him to expose himself one more time." When the call ended, Amelia looked at her mother with a mix of fear and admiration. "What are you going to do?" Clara answered calmly, "Not revenge, Amelia. Justice." That afternoon, she went to her study and opened the files Henry had sent copies of data proving Liam had used a fake identity to open an investment fund. She printed the documents and arranged them neatly on her desk. "Everything's ready," she murmured. "Now I just need him to admit it himself." As night fell, Clara sat in the living room, the golden lamplight gleaming off her phone. She typed a message to Liam. "If you want to talk, come see me. One last time, no police, no lawyers." Less than 10 minutes later, his reply came, "I'll be there, in 1 hour." Amelia overheard and panicked. "Mom, please don't. He could be dangerous." Clara held her daughter's hand firmly. "I know, but I have to end this. No more fear." An hour later, the sound of a car echoed through the driveway. Liam entered looking tired, but still carrying that air of arrogance. "You're impressive, Clara," he sneered. "You turned me into a villain in front of my own wife." "You did that yourself," Clara replied, her voice cold. "You wanted my money, but what you lost was trust." Liam laughed bitterly. "Trust I was just trying to secure Amelia's future. You can't take care of her forever." "And you thought betrayal was the best way to do that?" she asked sharply. He didn't answer, his tone softening. "What do you want? I'll leave if you promise to keep quiet." Clara met his gaze, eyes sharp as steel. "No. I want you to understand that I have everything, videos, access logs, and now your own confession." Liam froze, color draining from his face. "You're threatening me." "No," Clara said evenly. "I'm protecting my daughter. If you ever come back even once, the police will get every piece of evidence." The silence in the room was suffocating. Liam looked at her, voice breaking. "You win." Clara replied softly, "No, I'm simply taking back what's mine." He stood there for a moment, speechless, then turned and walked out. The door closed behind him, leaving only stillness. Amelia came out of the hallway, her voice trembling. "Mom, are you all right?" Clara smiled faintly, exhaustion and relief mingling in her eyes. "I'm fine. He won't be back." Amelia sat beside her and squeezed her hand. "I've never seen you this strong." Clara looked at her daughter and said gently, "That's because I never had to be before. But sometimes the ones who hurt us are the ones who force us to find our strength." The two women sat quietly by the fireplace, the soft glow of the flames warming their faces. Clara gazed out the window where moonlight poured over the still garden. The anger inside her had finally faded, replaced by peace. The peace of someone who knew she had won not with money but with wisdom and unshakable resolve. The next morning, the Silver Pines estate glowed under the sun, yet a thin veil of silence still lingered like mist. Clara Westwood stood by the window, gazing through the dew-soaked pines. Liam was gone, but a faint unease stirred inside her. Men like him never truly left for good. Amelia was still asleep. Clara brewed her coffee and stepped into the garden. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and lavender that soothed her mind. Everything seemed peaceful now, but that peace felt as fragile as a candle in the wind. Liam's final words echoed in her mind. "You win." They didn't bring her pride, only a quiet heaviness in her heart. The phone rang, breaking the stillness. It was Henry Lowell. "Clara," he said, "I just received word. Liam withdrew the remaining funds in New York. Looks like he's preparing to leave the country." Clara's tone was calm. "Let him go, Henry. He's already lost everything." And Amelia Henry asked. "She's learning to face herself," Clara replied softly. "She needs time to stand again." There was a pause before Henry said, "I'm coming to Silver Pines. There's something I want to show you." An hour later, he arrived with a thick envelope. "These are all the documents, evidence, and login records. If you want, I can forward them to the district attorney." Clara stared at the envelope for a long moment, then shook her head. No. Sometimes the greatest punishment isn't prison, but living with loss. The loss of trust, of love, of freedom. Henry smiled faintly. "You always know how to end things the right way." "Robert taught me," Clara said softly. "Intelligence is a weapon, but compassion is the true victory." By noon, Amelia came downstairs, her eyes still red from crying. "Mom," she said, "I've made a decision. I'm going back to teaching. I don't want to keep hiding." Clara smiled gently. "Good. When you dare to begin again, you'll realize the world is still open." Amelia hesitated. "Mom, you forgave Dad once when he made mistakes, didn't you?" Clara nodded slowly. "Yes, because I knew anyone can make mistakes, but forgiving doesn't mean forgetting." Amelia gave a weak smile. "I think I'll learn that too." Later that afternoon, as Henry prepared to leave, he stopped by the fence. "There are fresh footprints here. Someone was standing outside the gate last night." Clara stepped closer, looking at the faint marks on the damp ground. "Liam," she whispered. "He didn't dare come in, but he hasn't left yet." "I'll have someone check the cameras," Henry said. "Better safe than sorry." "Thank you," Clara replied. "Without you, I wouldn't have had the courage to get this far." Henry's eyes softened. "I'm only doing what Robert would have wanted, protecting you." When he left, Clara stood on the balcony watching the car disappear down the drive. A mix of warmth and loneliness washed over her. That evening, Amelia sat beside her by the fireplace, the glow casting soft light across their faces. "Mom," she said quietly, "if Dad were here, he'd be so proud of you." Clara smiled. "Your father used to say that a woman's strength lies in knowing when to be soft and when to be firm. I only did what he always believed I could." Amelia rested her head on her mother's shoulder. "I used to think happiness meant being loved, but now I know it's about loving yourself and living true to who you are." Clara brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face, her voice tender. "That's the most important lesson, my dear." Suddenly the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Clara hesitated before answering. A rough male voice came through. "I'm sorry, Clara." She recognized it instantly. It was Liam. "Why are you calling? I'm not coming back," he said, his tone weary. "I've lost everything, but I understand now. I thought money could buy respect. You were right, trust can't be bought." Clara said nothing. "Tell Amelia I'm sorry," he continued. Clara's reply was steady calm. "I don't need your apology. Just keep your word." There was silence on the line, then the call ended. Clara set the phone down and exhaled slowly. Amelia looked at her worried. Was it him? Yes, Clara nodded. And this time, he's really gone. Amelia sat beside her, holding her hand. Mom, let's go somewhere. Somewhere far away. Start fresh. Clara met her daughter's eyes, soft but determined. That sounds wonderful. Somewhere untouched by the past. The two sat in silence, listening to the wind whisper through the pines. The fire crackled, casting a warm glow on Clara's serene, dignified face. She turned toward the window where moonlight shimmered on the leaves. Inside her, all resentment had faded. What remained was peace, the peace of a woman who had reclaimed her life through wisdom, compassion, and an unyielding heart. On Tuesday morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting a soft glow on Clara Westwood's serene face. After weeks of turmoil, Silver Pines had finally returned to its peaceful rhythm, the sound of birdsong, the faint aroma of coffee, and the familiar creak of Amelia's footsteps on the wooden staircase. "You're up early, Mom," Amelia said, her voice still husky from sleep. Clara smiled. "I'm used to it. Even peace takes practice." They had breakfast together, toast, orange marmalade, and steaming jasmine tea. Amelia's eyes shone brighter than they had in weeks. "I sent in my request to return to teaching," she said. "The principal told me everyone's been waiting for me." Clara nodded gently. "Every beginning takes courage. Your father used to say the strongest people aren't those who never fall, but those who rise after falling." Amelia's eyes glistened. "I wasted so much time believing in the wrong person." "That's all right," Clara said warmly, "as long as you don't lose yourself." After breakfast, Amelia went out saying she would stop by the village library. Clara stayed behind tidying her study. When she opened a drawer, she found an old letter she had written to her daughter but never sent. She unfolded it, reading each line slowly. "Some people use love as a chain. You must learn to see who's holding your hand and who's pulling you down." Clara smiled softly, folded the letter again, placed it in a new envelope, and sealed it. This time, she would send it. Near noon, the doorbell rang. It was Henry Lowell carrying 2 cups of coffee, his familiar eyes still holding a trace of worry. "I came to say goodbye," he said. "The firm offered me a position back in San Francisco." Clara froze for a moment. "Henry, you've done more for me than any friend could. I haven't even thanked you properly." Henry smiled kindly. "You don't owe me anything. Robert always said you were the strongest woman he'd ever known. Now I believe him." Her heart swelled with both warmth and a hint of sadness. "San Francisco has plenty of light," she said softly. "Just remember to keep a little peace from here." He nodded and joked, "If you ever need a lawyer, just call. I'll be on the next flight." Their laughter mingled with the aroma of coffee. When Henry left, Clara stood at the doorway watching his car disappear through the pines. A chapter quietly closed without a word. Later in the afternoon, Amelia returned her arms full of books and a large envelope. "Mom, there's mail for you," she said. Clara opened it. Inside was a formal document, notice of case closure between Clara Westwood and Liam Crow. Beneath it in Henry's handwriting were the words, "Justice doesn't always need a courtroom." Clara smiled faintly. It was truly over. That evening, mother and daughter cooked dinner together. There was no silence, no tension, only the soft sound of laughter blending with the aroma of soup simmering on the stove. Amelia talked about her former students and the messages she had received welcoming her back. Clara listened, her heart swelling with pride. After dinner, they sat on the porch, watching the moon rise. The breeze carried the gentle scent of pine. Amelia leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "Mom, were you ever afraid of being alone?" Clara chuckled softly. No, because I was never really alone. Your father is still here, she said, touching her chest. And so are you. Amelia's voice trembled. I don't know how to thank you. Clara squeezed her daughter's hand. Don't thank me. Just live kindly. That's the greatest gift you could give me. A gentle wind stirred the pine branches outside their shadow, swaying softly. Clara looked up at the moon, and in its silver glow, she thought she saw Robert smiling. When Amelia went to bed, Clara walked into her study. She looked around the house, a place that had witnessed betrayal, tears, and finally renewal. It was no longer a refuge for loneliness, but a testament to strength and perseverance. She placed the sealed letter on her daughter's pillow. Tomorrow, when Amelia read it, she would understand that a mother's love isn't always gentle, but it is always the strongest fortress. Clara turned off the lights, opened the window, and let the night breeze flow in. The sound of the pines and the distant chirping of crickets blended into a soft lullaby of peace. She gently closed the door behind her, the moonlight washing over the white walls. In Clara's heart, all burdens had lifted, leaving only the quiet grace of a woman who had lost everything, yet reclaimed justice, faith, and a life finally her own. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the curtains, spreading a warm golden glow across the wooden floors of the Silver Pines estate. Clara Westwood woke early, and for the first time in months, she felt a true lightness in her heart. Outside, birds were chirping, the scent of fresh coffee filled the air, and the familiar sound of Amelia's footsteps echoed down the stairs. You're up early, Mom, Amelia said softly, her voice gentler than it had been in a long time. Clara smiled. I'm used to it. Peace is something you have to learn again. They shared breakfast together, toast orange marmalade and jasmine tea, simple yet comforting. Amelia's eyes sparkled with new energy. I'm going back to school today, she said. They asked me to lead the summer art program. Clara nodded, her heart swelling with pride. That's wonderful, Amelia. You've come full circle back to who you truly are. Your father would be smiling right now. After her daughter left, Clara stepped onto the porch and took a deep breath. The scent of pine, damp earth and cool morning air washed over her, cleansing the last traces of worry. Everything seemed settled at last, yet a quiet emptiness remained inside her, the kind that lingers after fighting too long just to find peace. She opened a drawer and took out the old stack of documents related to Liam Crow. Each page carried echoes of his slick voice and false smile. Striking a match, she whispered, Goodbye, Liam. I don't hate you anymore, but I'll never forget. The papers burned into ash, the wind scattering them into the morning light, leaving behind an unexpected calm. The phone rang. It was Henry Lowell. Good morning, Clara. I just wanted to share some good news. The case with Liam has been officially closed. He's left the country. Thank you, Henry, Clara said gently. All I want now is quiet. Me too, Henry replied. But honestly, I already miss Silver Pines. Clara chuckled. Really? You used to say you hated how quiet this place was. Henry laughed softly. Now I understand. Quiet isn't loneliness, it's peace, and peace can't be bought. Then you've learned the greatest lesson, Clara said warmly before hanging up, her heart suddenly at ease. Around noon, Amelia returned home early, setting a folded newspaper on the table. Mom, look, they wrote about you. Clara opened it. The headline read, The Woman Who Found Justice Without a Courtroom. The story was told anonymously, but there was no mistaking it was about her. Did you tell them? Clara asked. Amelia shook her head. No. Someone from the court must have. I was afraid you'd be upset. Clara smiled softly. It's all right. Maybe my story needed to be told to remind someone that not every loss is an ending. Amelia's eyes glistened. "I told my students about you today. I said art helps people heal after pain. I learned that from you." Clara's smile deepened pride, shining through her calm demeanor. "That's enough for me, my dear." Later that afternoon, Clara strolled through the garden. Sunlight filtered through the tall pines, and the leaves rustled gently in the breeze. On the ground, she noticed the faint footprint Henry had once mentioned, a trace of Liam. A gust of wind swept through, scattering the dust, erasing the mark. Clara watched quietly, smiling. The past was like that, too. Given enough time, it fades away. That evening, Amelia said, "Mom, let's go to the beach this weekend. Just the two of us. Our first trip after everything." Clara nodded. "That sounds perfect. The sea will be a new beginning." They packed their bags together. While sorting through her belongings, Clara opened Robert's old wooden box. Inside was a faded wedding photo and a letter. The handwriting made her heart tremble. "If you're reading this," it said, "then I'm already gone. But remember, Silver Pines was only a beginning, not the end. Live again, Clara." She folded the letter, tears falling as a smile spread across her face. "You can rest easy now, Robert. I did it." That night, Clara sat on the porch under the moonlight. The silver glow bathed the garden, and the soft hum of insects filled the air. Amelia was asleep, her face peaceful. Clara sat quietly, looking up at the stars, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "Robert," she whispered, "you always said I was stronger than I believed. Now I know it's true. I've lived again, not out of anger, but out of love." A gentle breeze drifted through the pines, carrying the scent of resin through the night. Clara smiled, pulling her shawl close. The house around her stood calm and steady, just like her heart, now peaceful, whole, and alive. Sunday morning arrived with a sky so blue it felt endless. The early sunlight spread over the old tiled roof of Silver Pines, a house that had witnessed both sorrow and strength. Clara Westwood carefully packed their belongings. 2 small suitcases rested side by side, one for her, one for Amelia. After so many years, this was their first trip together, free from fear and secrecy, filled only with freedom and peace. Amelia came down the stairs, her hair tied high, her smile bright. "I'm ready, Mom." Clara smiled softly. "Good. The sea is waiting for us." The car rolled away from the winding road leading out of Silver Pines. The pine forest faded behind them, sunlight filtering through the branches in golden streaks. The wind rushed in through the open window, carrying the scent of pine and fresh earth. They sat in silence, no words needed. After everything they had endured, that silence was peace itself. 3 hours later, the ocean appeared vast, deep blue, stretching endlessly before them. Amelia stepped out, spread her arms wide, and took a deep breath. "It's beautiful, Mom," she exclaimed, running down to the sand to let the waves touch her feet. Clara stood still, her heart swelling. 8 years earlier, she had been here with Robert. Back then, he had said, "We'll come back when everything is calm again." But he was gone before he could keep that promise. Now she had returned with the only piece of him that remained their daughter. They rented a small room overlooking the sea. In the afternoon, the two walked along the shore. The wind lifted Clara's silver hair, and the sunset cast a soft, gentle glow over her face. Amelia held her mother's hand. "I've never seen you this happy before," she said. Clara smiled. "Because today I don't have to fight anyone, not even myself." Amelia lowered her gaze. "I'm still angry at myself for trusting Liam, but if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't have learned the true meaning of trust." Clara squeezed her daughter's hand, her voice calm but full of depth. "Don't regret it, my dear. Every wound has its purpose. Just don't let it turn you into someone you're not." They continued walking, leaving 2 parallel trails of footprints on the sand. On the horizon, the sun glowed a deep red as it sank, painting the waves with golden light. Clara stopped and gazed into the distance. "Robert, can you see this?" she whispered. "I kept my promise." That evening, they took their dinner out onto the balcony. The sea was calm, the moon bright, and the breeze carried a gentle saltiness. Amelia said, "Mom, I have an idea. I want to start an art class for women, a place where they can paint and tell their stories just like you did." Clara looked at her pride shining in her eyes. "You want to turn pain into light. Your father would be so proud." Amelia smiled brightly. "I'll call it Silver Waves after Silver Pines and after you." Clara chuckled softly. "It's a beautiful name. Each wave is a new beginning, just like your life." That night, when Amelia had fallen asleep, Clara stayed out on the balcony. The sea was still the stars sparkling above. She opened Robert's old notebook and wrote a few lines. "We made it to the sea, Robert. No more tears, only peace. I promise to live well for you, for our daughter, and for myself." The next morning, Amelia woke and saw her mother walking barefoot along the beach, her dress flowing in the wind. She ran down and caught her mother's hand. The waves rolled around their feet, cool and gentle. "Mom," she said softly, "I feel like I've been reborn." Clara smiled. "That's because you chose to rise again. Happiness isn't something others give you, it's something you create yourself." Amelia looked at her mother, her eyes shining. "Do you ever regret what happened?" "No," Clara replied, her voice as soft as the breeze. "Without the darkness, we'd never learn to cherish the light." They stopped and watched the sunrise together. The golden morning light spread across the sand, and the sea breeze tousled their hair. In that moment, Clara knew her journey had truly come to an end. No more hatred, no more fear, only gratitude for everything life had given her. She turned to her daughter and said gently, "My dear, the sea rises and falls just like life. The waves come only to remind us that we are still alive." Amelia smiled through her tears. "I understand now, Mom." Clara held her hand tightly. "Then live fully no matter how many times the waves rise." They looked at each other and laughed their laughter, blending with the rhythm of the waves. In the radiant light of dawn, Clara closed her eyes, her heart as light as the sand beneath her feet. After everything, she had found the most precious thing of all, the peace within her soul. A week after their trip to the sea, Silver Pines returned to its quiet rhythm. In the early morning, mist rested softly over the rooftops, and the scent of pine drifted through the open window. Clara Westwood stood on the balcony, a cup of tea in her hand, watching the sun rise slowly over the hills. The ocean was far behind her now, but the feeling of calm remained deeply rooted in her heart. Amelia had gone back to teaching. Since opening her Silver Waves class, she had been busier than ever yet. Her smile was brighter, her eyes livelier. Every time Clara heard her daughter talk about the women who came to paint and learn how to live again, she smiled quietly. She knew Amelia's healing journey was complete. One morning, the doorbell rang. On the stone steps lay an envelope with no sender, only a note that read, "From Henry." Clara brought it inside and opened it. "Clara, I've arrived in San Francisco. It's noisy here, but sometimes I miss Silver Pines, the pine forest, and your tea. You once said, 'Silence is not loneliness.' Now I understand. I hope that when I return one day, you'll still be there as peaceful as you are today." Clara smiled softly after reading it. Henry had always been that kind of friend, appearing just when she needed him and quietly stepping away when everything was at peace again. She folded the letter carefully and placed it into the drawer with her old keepsakes. That afternoon, Amelia came home holding a bouquet of lavender. "Mom, my first student, finished her painting today," she said, her eyes shining. "She told me that thanks to me, she's learned how to smile again." Clara brushed her hand over the delicate purple petals and said gently, "You've given them hope, Amelia, the same way you once received it from me." Amelia hugged her tightly. "If it weren't for you, I would never have found the courage to forgive my past." Clara smiled softly. "And if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have had a reason to keep moving forward." The two sat together on the porch as the sunset stretched golden light across the pines. There was no need for words because peace itself spoke for them. That night, Amelia helped her mother clean out the attic. When they opened Robert's old trunk, they found a few photographs, a letter, and the silver ring he used to wear. Amelia looked at her mother and asked quietly, "Mom, have you ever thought about loving again?" Clara paused. "No," she said slowly, "but I'm not afraid of love anymore." Amelia smiled. "You deserve to be happy again. I think Dad would want that too." Clara was silent, the moonlight catching a soft smile on her lips. Maybe she said, "But sometimes happiness doesn't have to include someone else. Just living with purpose can be enough." Amelia gently placed the ring into her mother's hand. "Keep it not to remember Dad, but to remember that love still exists. It just changes form." Clara looked down at the silver ring glimmering under the light, feeling her heart warm. Later that night, when Amelia had gone to bed, Clara sat alone in her study. She opened Robert's old notebook. Between the worn pages, a folded slip of paper fell out. In his familiar handwriting, it read, "If you ever feel lonely, look around you. Every person you've helped is a part of me." Clara smiled, her eyes glistening. Henry, Amelia, the women at Silver Waves. They were all fragments of the love Robert had left behind in this world. The next morning, Amelia left early for work. Clara went out into the garden, cut a few sprigs of lavender, and stopped beneath the great oak tree where she and Robert had once taken their wedding photo. She laid the flowers down and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me how to love life even without you." A gentle breeze stirred the petals, trembled, and sunlight filtered through the branches, softening her face with a quiet peace. That afternoon, Amelia called from school. "Mom, someone wants to meet you," she said. "A journalist. She wants to write about Silver Waves." Clara chuckled. "Me, there's nothing special about me." "Yes, there is," Amelia said firmly. "Your story could help other women find their strength." Clara looked out the window where the white curtains swayed in the breeze. If she wants to know, she said then, tell her about a woman who lost everything but still chose to rise again. Tell her that true strength isn't found in money or power, but in kindness and endurance. On the other end, Amelia was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I'll tell it exactly that way." Clara smiled and closed the notebook in her hands. Outside, the afternoon sunlight spread across the stone steps like golden silk. She knew her life wasn't ending. It was simply turning to a new chapter, one filled with grace, compassion, and the quiet belief that every wound given time can turn into light. On Monday morning, Silver Pines was bathed in the soft, golden light of dawn. Clara Westwood sat in the living room, a bouquet of lavender arranged by Amelia the night before resting on the table. Its gentle fragrance filled the air. Beside it lay a letter from the journalist Amelia had mentioned. "Dear Mrs. Westwood, my name is Sarah Myers, a writer who focuses on stories of resilience. Your daughter told me you've overcome many hardships to protect your family and your faith. I would be honored to meet you just to listen, not to judge." Clara folded the letter slowly. She had spent most of her life keeping her story to herself, but if sharing it could help someone else stand again, perhaps the time had come. That afternoon, Sarah arrived at Silver Pines. She was a petite young woman with kind, earnest eyes. "Mrs. Westwood," she said softly, There are thousands of women living in silence and fear. I believe your story could give them hope." Clara looked at her and asked gently, "Do you think I'm some sort of hero?" Sarah shook her head. "No, I think you're human, and that's what makes others believe they can be strong too." Such simple words, yet they silenced Clara. Through her entire journey, she had never considered herself strong. She had simply done what she had to do to survive. But now she understood courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. The interview lasted more than 2 hours. Clara told everything from the day Robert died through Liam's betrayal to the moment she and Amelia finally found peace. Sarah didn't interrupt, only listened, taking notes, sometimes smiling quietly. When it ended, Sarah said softly, "I was left behind after a painful marriage. Hearing your story made me realize I was never weak. I just hadn't yet found the courage to forgive myself." Clara took her hand gently. Forgiveness is the only way to move on. We can't change the past, but we can always shape the future. When Sarah left, the afternoon sun poured gold across the stone steps. Clara stood watching her car disappear behind the pines, her heart filled with quiet certainty that her story had found a new purpose, not just to close old wounds, but to open new doors. That evening, Amelia returned home holding a newspaper. "Mom Sarah sent me the draft. Your story will be featured in the main section of Voices of Women." Clara laughed lightly. "Front page, I only told my story." Amelia read the headline aloud, "The Woman Who Chose Herself." Clara was silent for a moment before smiling. "A beautiful title. It took me half a lifetime to learn that." They sat together at the table, candlelight flickering between them. Amelia rested her head on her mother's shoulder. "Mom, I think your story will help so many women find hope." Clara replied softly, "If even one woman stands up after reading it, that's enough." The next morning, the article was published. Hundreds of comments poured in. "Your story made me cry. I've been betrayed too, but now I want to stand up again. Thank you for reminding me that hope still exists." Amelia read each line, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, they truly love you." Clara smiled gently. "No, they don't love me. They see themselves in my story." That afternoon, Clara walked into the garden and stood beneath the old oak tree. The sunset filtered through the leaves, casting a soft glow across her face. From the porch, Amelia called out, "Mom, it's Sarah. She's on the phone." Clara picked up. Sarah's voice trembled with emotion. "Mrs. Westwood, your story is everywhere. They've invited me to speak at a women's resilience conference, and they want you to come too." Clara chuckled. "Me, I'm just an ordinary mother." Sarah replied, "That's exactly why they want you. Real women with real stories." Clara looked up at the sky, glowing red with dusk. "All right," she said, "I'll go, but only if you stand on stage with me." Sarah laughed. "Deal, Mrs. Westwood." When the call ended, Amelia stepped outside, her eyes bright. "Mom, you're really going to speak?" Clara nodded. "Yes, because I've learned one thing: it's never too late to begin again." The evening breeze drifted through the garden, carrying the soft scent of lavender. In the golden light of sunset, the woman who had once been broken stood tall, smiling. She wasn't telling her story for pity, but to plant a seed of hope in others, a reminder that every crack, when it welcomes the light, can become part of something beautiful. 3 weeks after the article was published, Silver Pines was no longer as quiet as before. Letters, emails, and bouquets of flowers kept arriving for Clara Westwood. Some wrote that they read her story every morning to find the courage to leave an unhappy marriage. Others sent photos of their daughters saying that thanks to her, they had taught their children self-respect. Clara read every line feeling both humbled and deeply moved. One morning, Amelia returned from school holding an invitation. Mom Sarah sent this. There's a women's conference in New York next week. They want you to speak with her. Clara looked surprised. New York? I've never been there. Amelia smiled. Then it's the perfect first time. You're not just telling a story, you're proving what you believe. Clara nodded softly. If you come with me, I'll go. A week later, they arrived in New York. The city glowed bright and loud, a world apart from the stillness of Silver Pines. Clara felt a flicker of nervousness, but when she saw Amelia beside her eyes full of pride, her heart steadied. On the day of the conference, the grand hall was packed. Hundreds of women filled the seats, some in business suits, others in traditional dresses, and young girls clutching notebooks. When the host introduced the woman behind the story that inspired a nation, applause thundered through the room. Clara stepped onto the stage beside Sarah, the lights warm and strange on her face. Sarah began, "We know Mrs. Clara from the article, The Woman Who Chose Herself. But today, I want to call her proof that strength is not something we're born with, but something forged through loss." Clara took the microphone, her voice trembling at first, then growing steady. "I'm not extraordinary," she said. "I've been afraid, I've been weak, I've trusted the wrong people. But when there was no one left to lean on, I chose myself. And when I stood up, the world seemed to shift with me." The room fell silent, then erupted into applause like a rising tide. A middle-aged woman stood up, tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Clara, I just left a 20-year marriage where I was controlled. Hearing you, I know I did the right thing." Clara stepped down and embraced her. None of us are ever truly alone. We just forget our own worth. After the talk, reporters asked for interviews, but Clara only said, "If anyone sees themselves in my story, then the rest speaks for itself." That night, Amelia and Clara walked beneath the glittering city lights. Amelia's voice trembled. "Mom, today you weren't just strong, you made people believe happiness is real." Clara squeezed her daughter's hand. "That's not strength, it's freedom. Only when we release the past do we realize how far we can go." They stopped on a bridge, watching cars stream by like glowing rivers. Amelia asked softly, "Do you still miss Dad? I do." Clara replied, her tone calm, "But it doesn't hurt anymore. If he were still here, he'd be smiling at us right now." A few days later, when they returned to Silver Pines, the house seemed brighter. Letters of gratitude still arrived, but Clara no longer saw them as praise, she saw them as purpose. Together, she and Amelia began hosting small gatherings for local women, calling them evening circles. Every Saturday night, the living room glowed with warm light. Women from all walks of life came to share their stories, drink tea, and speak truths they'd long kept hidden. Clara never lectured, she simply listened. She understood that sometimes what people need most isn't advice, but a safe space to be heard. One evening, after everyone had gone, Amelia looked around the room, still scented with tea. "Dad would be proud, Mom." Clara smiled gently. "No, your father would say, we've only just begun." She lit a single candle and placed it at the center of the table. The flame flickered, casting soft reflections across the walls like a small star in the night. "Amelia," she said quietly, "when you become strong enough, pass that light to others. Because light only matters when it's shared." Amelia took her mother's hand and nodded. "I promise." Outside, the wind whispered through the pine trees, carrying the cool night air. The house glowed softly, a beacon amid the quiet hills, where two women had turned pain into strength, and strength into love. Autumn arrived, and Silver Pines was draped in a brilliant golden hue. Pine needles began to fall, covering the gravel path that led to the porch. Clara Westwood stood in the garden, pruning the dry lavender stems with gentle precision. She still kept her morning gardening routine, though now it carried no trace of heaviness or worry. Life had become lighter, simple, yet never empty. From a distance, the sound of Amelia's laughter drifted through the crisp air. She was guiding a new group of women at the evening circles, the weekly gatherings the two of them had built together. Clara paused, watching her daughter speak with passion. Sunlight danced across Amelia's confident, youthful face, and in that moment, Clara saw a reflection of her younger self, only now stronger, braver, able to smile through old scars. After the session, Amelia walked over, smiling brightly. "Mom, I just got an invitation from New York. They want to expand the evening circles nationwide. I wanted to hear your thoughts." Clara wiped her hands on her apron, her voice calm and tender. "You should go. I lit the flame, but you are the one who will carry it farther." Amelia hesitated. "But if I leave, you'll be here alone." Clara smiled softly. "I have Silver Pine's memories and peace. You're the one who must continue the journey." That evening, they sat together on the porch under a full moon. Amelia leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "Mom, I'm scared to leave this place. It's our home." "Home isn't where you stay," Clara said gently. "It's what you carry inside your heart." Amelia's eyes glistened. "Will you be proud of me if I do well?" "No," Clara whispered with a smile. "I've already been proud for a long time." A few days later, Amelia left Silver Pines. That morning, as she rolled her suitcase toward the car, a breeze swept through, sending golden leaves cascading around them. Clara hugged her tightly. "Go, my girl. Live with all your heart. Don't fear failure, only fear not trying." Amelia nodded, tears in her eyes. "Please take care of yourself. When the project's done, I'll come back." Clara smiled. "I'm not waiting for you to return. I'm waiting for you to grow." The car drove off, leaving a faint trail of dust. Clara stood watching until it disappeared behind the hill. In her heart was a quiet blend of emptiness and pride. The woman who had once been crushed by loss could now watch her daughter leave without fear or sorrow. In the days that followed, Silver Pine slipped back into its tranquil rhythm. Every morning, Clara brewed tea and opened the windows, letting the forest air fill the house. She received messages from Amelia, almost daily photos of meetings, the faces of new women, and laughter echoing from conference rooms. Evening circles now existed in 3 cities, and people had begun calling Amelia the youngest lightkeeper. Clara didn't reply right away. Instead, she saved every photo on her computer, then opened Robert's old notebook. The last page was still blank. Slowly, she picked up her pen and wrote, "My love, our daughter has achieved what I once dreamed of. I worry no more. Silver Pines is no longer a shelter of memories. It has become a beacon. I only wish you could see it." That afternoon, she went to the garden and placed the notebook beneath the old oak. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, illuminating her handwriting until it seemed to glow. "Robert," she whispered, "everything we began has blossomed." That night, rain tapped softly on the roof. Clara sat reading, surrounded by a sense of profound peace. Her phone rang. It was a video call from Amelia. Her daughter's glowing face appeared on the screen, a grand hall behind her. "Mom, I finished my speech. Over 500 people attended. They all wanted me to thank you." Clara smiled. "You did wonderfully." Amelia's voice trembled. "They asked me the secret to overcoming pain. I told them I never overcame it. I just learned to live with it. And the person who taught me that was you." Clara laughed softly, tears welling in her eyes. "You're remarkable, Amelia. Remember, a woman's strength doesn't lie in never falling. It lies in rising quietly." The wind rustled through the pines as the rain faded, leaving only the whisper of leaves. Clara gazed at her daughter's radiant face on the screen, her heart overflowing with gratitude. When the call ended, she stepped outside. The post-rain sky was clear, and the moonlight glimmered over the forest. Clara whispered into the night as if to herself, "At last, everything has found its place. Love, faith, and light." On the first winter morning after Amelia's departure, Silver Pines lay under a soft veil of mist. The pine trees swayed gently in the cold wind, while inside the house the fireplace cast a tender golden warmth. Clara Westwood brewed a pot of tea and set it by the window. From where she sat, she could see the stone path leading to the garden, the very place where the summer before Amelia had planted her first lavender bushes. Now they had dried, yet their faint fragrance still lingered in the air. The phone chimed. "A message from Amelia appeared, Mom. Today I was honored at the National Women's Conference. I wish you were here to receive this award with me." Attached was a photo of Amelia standing on stage holding a silver emblem engraved with the words, "Silver Waves, the light that never fades." Clara smiled softly, her eyes glistening. "That light, my dear," she whispered, "has always been within you." The day passed slowly. Clara tidied the living room and hung new photographs Amelia had sent, women smiling, holding paintbrushes, faces illuminated by gentle light. Each image was a story, a life rekindled. Silver Pines was no longer a house of pain, but a sanctuary of transformation. By late afternoon, the sound of a car stopping at the gate caught her attention. She looked up in surprise to see Amelia stepping out holding a vibrant bouquet of flowers. "You came home without telling me?" Clara asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Amelia grinned. "I wanted to surprise you. This award belongs to both of us, Mom. I couldn't accept it alone." They embraced tightly. Clara could feel her daughter's heartbeat strong and steady. "I'm proud of you," she said softly. "Not because you succeeded, but because you've lived true to your heart." That evening, they had dinner by the fireplace. Amelia talked about her travels, her speeches, and the women who once felt hopeless but had learned to smile again. Clara listened, sometimes smiling, sometimes wiping her tears. Near the end of dinner, Amelia placed a white envelope on the table. "Mom, I want you to see this." Inside was an official letter from the Women's Future Alliance. "We are honored to invite Mrs. Clara Westwood as a keynote speaker at the International Conference on Women and Resilience to be held in Geneva." Clara was speechless. "They invited me." Amelia nodded, her eyes shining. "Sarah nominated you. They want to hear your story, not through an article, but from your own voice and your own heart." Clara held the letter for a long moment, then smiled. "I've been silent for many years. Perhaps it's time to use this voice to finally close the circle." 2 months later, Geneva lay blanketed in white snow. The grand hall sparkled with light. When Clara stepped onto the stage, the audience fell completely silent. She stood tall, her eyes bright, yet serene. "I am here," she began, "not to speak of pain, but of what comes after it, gratitude." She spoke briefly about Robert, about her daughter's marriage, about betrayal, and how she found her strength again. "When I chose to forgive, it wasn't weakness. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means freeing yourself. Every woman carries a light within her. No matter how many times it is extinguished, a single breath of warmth can bring it back to life." The hall erupted into applause. In the front row, Amelia and Sarah looked at each other, eyes filled with tears. When Clara stepped down, Amelia ran to her whispering, "Mom, you did it." Clara smiled, her voice soft as snow. "No, my dear, we did." That night in their hotel room overlooking Lake Geneva, mother and daughter watched the snow fall. The city lights shimmered on the water like 1,000 silver fragments. Clara held Amelia's hand. Robert once told me that if I ever found peace, he would no longer worry. Now he can rest easy." Amelia rested her head on her mother's shoulder. "Mom, I think Dad is still here in every woman you've helped." Clara nodded gently. Outside, the snow continued to fall slow and calm as the passing of time. When they returned to Silver Pines, Clara placed a new photo on the mantel of the two of them on stage in Geneva. Beneath it, she wrote, "Love never disappears. It only changes shape to guide us back to the light." That afternoon, sunlight streamed through the pines, casting a long golden beam across the photo. Clara sat by the window, eyes closed, her heart completely at peace. Every wound, every loss had at last turned into serenity. Then she smiled, her voice barely above a whisper. "If anyone hears this story, I hope they believe that life always gives us another chance, as long as we have the courage to choose ourselves.